I was quite excited when I realised who was in Love Under the Big Top. This is the 5th episode of the 5th season of The Golden Girls. It's directed by Terry Hughes, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. I don't have a tremendous amount of notes, but I still really thoroughly enjoyed this. And we have two parts of the narrative. Everything ties together really nicely. The subplot involves Rose wanting to go to this protest to save the dolphins. And Dorothy is in a relationship with her lawyer boyfriend, Ken. And Ken is played by Dick Van Dyke. And I cannot express my happiness. I think the character is just perfect for him. An absolute joy. And they have a lovely time together. And then he tells her that he's coming over to speak with her because he wants to talk to her about something important. And immediately, the girls all think he's going to propose. I think it's a fair guess. And he sits down on the sofa with Dorothy, and she puts her hand out, ready for the ring. And he tells her to close her eyes. She opens her eyes, and he's wearing a red nose, a clown's nose. And I have to say, it was a fabulous moment. And it turns out that he wants to give up being a lawyer to become a full-time circus clown, which might sound a bit ridiculous, but actually he's done a lot of volunteering at the children's hospital as a clown to cheer up the children, and he really thoroughly enjoys it. So it's not like he's giving up on a whim. He's got evidence that this is something he would like to do, and he seems really enthusiastic about it. And Dorothy goes out with him, but she didn't really get on well with the other clowns' wives, and she's talking with the girls in quite an interesting scene, actually. I thought Rose was really delightful here because Rose thinks that this is the dream. She would love to be in a relationship with a clown, and I loved her enthusiasm. It was adorable. But Dorothy admits to the others, not to Ken, but she admits that she's actually embarrassed. And I think there's a fine line between doing something for work and doing it 24/7. And it's not necessarily completely clear whether Ken is doing this just in the circus or if he's dressing like a clown all day, every day. I feel like it's just for the circus. And if that's the case, Dorothy doesn't really have a right to be embarrassed. If he was doing this all day, every day, going to the bank dressed as a clown or whatever, then at the same time, he has a right to do that if he wants to. But I could understand her embarrassment because people are going to stare. But if he's only doing it in the circus, what's the problem? So I feel like Dorothy, on the one hand, it's understandable that she's embarrassed, but at the same time, I feel like she's making a big deal out of it when he's just taking on a new career as a performer. So I don't completely agree with Dorothy, but I guess I can understand where she's coming from. We're then down at the dock in this really chaotic scene for the Save the Dolphins protest, and it gets a little out of hand. And the next thing we know, we're in a courtroom. And I love this because I love courtroom scenes. I love courtroom dramas, a setting that I really enjoyed. And Sophia, having heard that Dorothy, Blanche and Rose were in court, called Ken, the lawyer, of course, and Ken arrives as quickly as possible. He didn't even have time to change. He's wearing his full clown outfit, and he looks brilliant. I have to say, Dick Van Dyke looks fantastic in the very kind of classic clown get-up, and he delivers this speech, and ultimately things work out right. And we're then at the final scene. It seems like a very quick episode. I guess things were just moving really quickly because I love Dick Van Dyke, and I wish he was in it a little bit more. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen because Dorothy says to him, "I don't love you." And I appreciate her not stringing him along or not taking too long to come to this conclusion. But what I did like is that she made it clear that it wasn't because he was a clown. She said to him, "If I loved you, I'd follow you anywhere." And she did make it clear. But I also think that maybe in part it is the clown thing. But I think, and this is my reading of the situation, the clown thing made her question whether she truly loves him. Because as she said, if she truly loved him, it wouldn't be an issue. But she doesn't love him enough or at all to be able to overlook that or come to terms with that. So I think it was the right time for her to say that. And it was a little emotional. Ken didn't make a big deal out of it. He just accepted it and admitted that he also wouldn't give up the circus for her. So neither of them were particularly in love. And she goes to dry her eyes on his handkerchief and walks away. And it's a clown's handkerchief, a very long handkerchief. Dick Van Dyke's face in that moment was an absolute picture. It was absolutely brilliant. And it was a nice, light-hearted way to end things after having quite an emotional scene. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic episode. Slightly biased because I do, like many people, love Dick Van Dyke. And I just think the character of Ken was perfect for him. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Also a great message about following your dreams. Maybe do it the way Ken did and start off with volunteering as a clown to make sure you do actually like it. I feel like giving up practicing law to join a circus without any experience might be a bit of a midlife crisis move. But clearly Ken had that experience. He'd been volunteering. He thoroughly enjoyed it. So why shouldn't he do something that makes him happy? And I think that in itself is a really great message. Obviously, we have messages about saving the dolphins as well. So a lot to offer. Very funny. Dick Van Dyke is fantastic. Love Under the Big Top is a pretty great episode of The Golden Girls.